All right, everyone, welcome to the show. It's Tiffany Hernandez here, and today we have Dr. Saara. Welcome, Saara. How are you?
It's actually Saara. I'm good.
Saara, sorry. I was
Sorry.
like, I'm probably butchering
That's
her name because
okay.
there's an extra A in there, but that's okay. I'm always willing to be corrected. And Saara, can you share a little bit about what you do and how you serve your clients? Because on this show, we talk a lot about ADHD, business, because I'm ADHD myself. And so I'm here just, sharing how we can get more help.
Yeah. So I help humans live happier, healthier lives. And there's a bunch of ways I do that. I also have ADHD. But I didn't know. Well, I can get into the story if you're interested in hearing.
Yes.
But I have had a health and wellness company since 2013. And that was typically so my background is in kinesiology and health promotion. And then I have a master's and PhD in sports and exercise psychology. And it was really ironic because when I was in school and college, I was like, I will never be the person who helps someone lose weight. And that's not what I do. Like weight loss is a consequence of changing your life to be healthier. So I don't actually work with weight loss. I help people become badasses, happier, healthier, stronger. But because my background is in basically like brain and body training,
Mhm.
so the overarching theme is happier and healthier, but what I actually do is help people make mindset shifts, manage their ADHD brain to make life feel easier, to understand your brain better, to kind of feel like you have a purpose here. And I know a lot of ADHDers often, especially, so I also work in school districts and help teachers, and I know you do homeschooling, so it's somewhat similar. People who, moms specifically, teachers, nurses, anyone who's in a caring profession who has ADHD. And I know this is also if you don't have ADHD, but we often tend to put people's needs in front of our own. So as an ADHDer, when you do that like your whole life, what ends up happening is you kind of don't feel like you know who you are, what you actually enjoy, because you're also not only prioritizing everybody else's needs, but we're masked up, and like every human you interact with might get a different version of your personality. And when you're doing that your whole life, often when you don't even realize you have ADHD, then you start to want to do personal development or get happier, healthier, take action. You're like, whoa, what do I even like? Like, who am I? What do I need? How do I make life like it doesn't have to feel so hard? So that's what I tell people. I help them so their life doesn't have to feel so hard. And it started with being health and fitness change and living a happier, healthier life. And then what happened is, so backstory, for my master's and PhD, I'm an internationally published researcher. I had one of my dissertations here. I think I put it away, but in motivation. So I'm an internationally published researcher in motivation because I was like, why the heck is this easy for everybody else and everything seems so hard for me? So I was like, I'll just hyper focus, not knowing that it was a hyper focus. I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can about motivation so I can
Huh.
be like other humans. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm studying because I was a diver. I actually found out 12 days before the Olympics I wasn't going. So during my process, I was always super relevant, super interested in things that were relevant to me. So when I was studying, I was also like an international athlete. I was learning sports psychology, I was learning performance psychology, and it was all relevant to me. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to help other people do this. But what happened is I did all my coursework. We moved to the United States. We moved to Denver. We were living in Finland. I was conducting research here. So my research was in high level athletes across 3 different countries. And I had a research grant, and that research grant got taken away. So I kind of took a break and got depressed. My husband's like, why don't you do fitness training like you did in college? Like you really like that. So I started back into the world of health and fitness, became alive again, not knowing at that point yet that like depression and anxiety and ADHD are, well, anxiety and and depression tend to be from unmanaged ADHD. So
Yes.
then, yeah, no, 100%. And that science like backs this all up. So then I totally got into it, and that was in 2010. And I totally got back into the fitness scene and I was like, I love this. Like, this is what I was meant to do. And then fast forward, I started my own company in 2013. And then I think it was 2019 rolls around, and my supervisor's like, so you can't be a PhD student for a decade. Like, you have to graduate. This is like the 10th year. You have to graduate, or like you're not a student anymore. That means like you quit. And all an ADHDer needs is a deadline, because we procrastinate forever. But I also wasn't, during that process, like I learned about how academia works and research, and just not interested in being involved, because I don't like statistics and I don't like how other people take your work and they put their name on it. And that's a whole other thing I don't need to get into. But what happened is I had a year left. So I'm like, yes, let's do it. And I went to go read my academic writing and I didn't understand. And I freaked out. And I read the same sentence over and over again, paragraph over and over again. And I was like, what? My brain is broken. What the heck? So I went and got a brain scan. And I have a unicorn brain. So there's all this other stuff that was in there that they found, but they're like, no, 100% you have ADHD. So they do 2 brain scans. They do a regular one, and then they give you this iPad and give you this stupid matching task, and you do it forever. And at the same time, you're getting injected with this radioactive dye. And then they wait 30 minutes and they scan you again. And they're like, yeah, when you're doing a boring task, you have no blood flow, very minimal blood flow to your frontal lobe. And I was so excited because I was like, that's what it feels like when I'm doing a boring task and I'm like, come on, brain, come on, brain. And my brain's like, we don't do it like that. So then I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I hyper focused on ADHD. I learned tools and techniques so I could get my PhD done that year. And since then, that was in 2020, I've now been realizing, so my background is in motivation and health promotion, kinesiology, but now I've like hyper focused for the past 5 years on how the ADHD brain works and how it's actually, yes, of course, like a lot of motivational things for regular people work, but we also need all this other bonus stuff. And we have to treat our brain like we're consistently in a competition or a challenge, or it has to be fun and it has to be urgent, and it has to be novel. So realizing I don't want a lot of women, and I do have some men clients as well, to struggle the same way that I did. And because I have ADHD, my brain works 4 times faster than a normal person. And I actually care about this. So I now have learned a lot of information and combine that with the information I already have. So I help people get to success faster. My name is Saara Happening, and my company is called Performance is Happening. So that's a long story about the independent part of my business. Then Performance is Happening also has a organizational side. So we go into companies and we have 3. Oh, I actually have a thing over there. We have 3 things we work on: performance, which the performance part is the psychobiosocial model. So we look at people's psychology, their biology, and then the social component, so the environment of the organization. Then we do wellness. So we do all things like, I have a program called Move at Work Challenge. We work on things like stress and burnout and emotional regulation. And then as of this year, we are also doing a lot of neurodiversity training. So we
That's
go into
awesome.
companies and teach everybody about ADHD, because what the stats are showing is, in a company, there's a lot of stigma around ADHD. And
Yes.
the more neurotypicals know about, like, whoa, like an ADHDer might be not really good at prioritizing time, but they're amazing at like thinking out of the box and brainstorming, coming up with ideas and meeting fast deadlines, and like teaching the whole population that ADHD can be a superpower, and then taking the population of ADHDers within a company and teaching them how to make life easier so it doesn't have to feel so hard.
Right.
Okay, that was a long story about what I do, but
That's
there we go.
perfect. I was like wanting to interject so many times, and I had to tell my ADHD brain, no, let her finish. And then hopefully you'll still remember everything you wanted to say, and you can replay all of that in your brain. And I know I should have been taking notes, but I'm like, mental note, mental note. Okay. Several things. Yes, as a caretaker, oh my goodness, I am constantly burned out. And like, I knew God was calling me home to homeschool. I was in interior design, very fast paced, very much burned out. I burned myself out. That was one of my hyper fixations. I still love design. Like I bring design into my clients and what I do with helping them start their schools and all of this and like their educational platforms and all of these things. Like I can see how all the pieces go together, but oh my goodness, I burned myself out because I was trying to be caretaker and I was trying to be, Tiffany the designer. And they didn't, I could not make them work together. And I didn't realize that I had ADHD till about a year and a half ago. So I'm very late diagnosed, and I'm not even been truly diagnosed, but I know for a fact, like there's too many signs of, yes, this is exactly what I'm dealing with. And my kids deal with it too. Yay. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So, and what you're talking about, like masking to the point where you don't even know what you like anymore. I just saw this reel about Jim Carrey where he also has ADHD, and he was talking about how like I've masked so much that I don't know who I am and what I like and who Jim Carrey is. And it's like the same thing for so many ADHDers. Like I don't know who I am, what I like, and like why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I really like this, or am I doing this because this is the pigeonhole that has gotten me some success and I'm addicted to success, or I'm addicted to work, or I'm addicted, like whatever it is that our brains are addicted to, is that why I'm doing it? So I love that you're sharing about that and that you can help moms especially and teachers, because yes, being in that caregiving environment, it is so taxing on our brain that when you were saying you have zero blood flow to go do boring tasks, that is me. Like, please do not ask me to clean my house and do the dishes. Please, just please. And the same thing for my kids. I'm like, you're going to have to learn how to do this really hard work. So we focus on doing those tasks, and it's pulling teeth every single day for I don't even know how many years now of getting them to do these things because we have to learn how to do them. But who is it a handful? Um, because those boring tasks are so boring, it's like then all this other stuff gets left to the side. Like paperwork, I absolutely hate paperwork. I know some other ADHDers that absolutely hate paperwork because it's monotonous. And we're like, there's no novelty to that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you got your PhD hating paperwork.
Same.
Like that is all paper.
Yeah. Well, electronic now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I give you some tips for those things that you just brought up?
Absolutely.
For boring tasks for us and our kiddos. So it's interesting because for regular people, they can do a task to get a reward later, and our brains don't work like that. So what I always encourage people to say is pair the boring task with a not so bad task. So whether that's like with kiddos, it could be like listening to music and doing or putting the dishes away. For me, well, I know for a lot of people, like doing laundry is not hard. Putting the laundry away is like pulling teeth. So can I listen to an audiobook? Can I listen to a training? Um, Having another human there, it doesn't, what I have found, like family doesn't work as a body double so great. It has to be, I find, someone outside of the family who can come share space with you. But the great thing is you can also do that over the internet. So I know that you have a lot of your community has a lot of moms. Maybe there's a time once a week that you guys are all doing dishes at the same time, but you have your computers there, or all putting laundry away, or all like whatever the hard task is. And that hard task some days is not so hard. Along with that, there are 2 parts of your cycle. If you're still having a cycle, that you can plan to do the hard task.
Okay.
But knowing that, like, I always say it's like a mountain range. And like with ADHD, you got to ride the highs and be able to have tools and techniques for the lows. Because once our momentum and our dopamine is high, we can do more things. And with a neurotypical, and I used to tell people this, and it's so funny because even here I have handfuls of books on habits. And even when I still knew I had ADHD, I was like, I just got to learn more about habits so I can help my clients better. And I'm like, whoa, habits don't work for us. Habits are always going to be tasks. So we have to find a way to make those tasks easier. Like I told my
Yes.
best friend we were in California and San Diego and we were out and about and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I was like, I didn't brush my teeth this morning. She was like, oh, like she had a mini heart attack and she's like, do we need to go back? She's like, how did you forget to brush your teeth? And I was like, well, we're in a new location. Like I didn't tell. It's not. She's like, is that not a habit? Like you're 40. And I'm like, no, I have to consciously every day be like, I am go brush your teeth, go brush your teeth. And
To my kids too.
people are like,
And
what?
my husband doesn't understand it at all. He's like, why do they not understand like this is the chore? It's like we've gone over this. You have three tasks. We have three things that we respect, are expecting of you. Your schoolwork, your music, and your chores. Like what is so hard about that? So now I'm trying to train my husband on all of these things. He's like, but I don't understand why they can't just go and do it. I'm like, I don't even just go and do it. It's a conscious effort to go and brush my teeth. And I'm 30 something, like I still have to be like, did I brush my teeth last night? I really don't remember,
Yeah.
like even last night, if I brushed my teeth because, oh my gosh, my brain. And we have made some task charts. I have written things down. They do okay sometimes with having like this is what's required, but then it becomes a blinder on and they can't see the chart anymore or they don't go and look at it because they're like yeah whatever their brain it's not novel anymore, so it's like having to recreate all of these ways to keep their brain engaged with the task list even, like whether that's a new
Yeah.
task list, like oh we're gonna maybe I need to rotate through task list, but then I'm like that is all the stuff that I have to keep in my brain as their caregiver with a more neurotypical husband who doesn't really see how this all works, and also managing a business and doing the homeschooling. And it's like, yeah, we overload ourselves because we think we have all this time and we really don't. So there comes the burnout. What would you say has been like the biggest help for your clients when you like, okay, you're in a burnout, what do we do?
There's lots. So what is challenging and what is the most helpful um is being mindful. And mindfulness is hard for everybody, but mindfulness is most challenging for an ADHD brain because there's now and there's not now. And because we have a gazillion thoughts all the time. So my ADHD is special because I have combined. So for a lot of women, they have inattentive, where males tend to have hyperactive. I have both. So I get to be on it from both sides. But a lot of the women who have ADHD, it's on their head. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not fidgeting all the time. Their brain
Mm-hmm.
is going, 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 going.
That's
And
me. Yeah.
what happens is because our brain works 4 times faster, we have the task at hand, whatever it is we need to do. But we see like, okay, there's 10 ways that this can go. And each of those 10 ways has like this, this, this. And I always say training your brain is like training a muscle. I mean, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, so you can't see, but I have guns under here. I'm really strong. And I
I'm
was like, I
not.
didn't do one bicep. I didn't do one bicep curl and get ripped. Like so we have to first think that we have to train our brain the same way. And mindfulness, I'm going to give you my definition, which was helpful when I started learning about this, is being in this present moment with curiosity, but no judgment. So I'm going to
Hmm.
say that last part again, moms, no judgment. Okay.
Right.
I don't want you to be shoulding all over yourselves. Right.
Yes.
So being mindful is in this moment right now. And what we're doing is training our brain. Okay. If I could say my PhD in one sentence, controlling the controllables is a great like mantra for any human, but I find ADHDers. But in this moment, all we have is this moment right here, right now. We're never going to get it back. And if we can bring our attention to ourselves. So there's lots of ways to do that. Going into your body, like somatic practice, is the most helpful for me. It's very
Okay.
challenging for me to shut my brain off. So what I like to do is I find a stretch position, and this can be any stretch position. I'm on camera, so you can do this. One that I really like because we tend to hold a lot of stress and trauma in our hips. So I do the butterfly pose. So if you pretend my hands are my feet, I put my bottoms of my feet together and I just let my hips and knees
Lay
open
out.
wide. So you want to, yeah. What do they call that in yoga? I forget. Um, but you want to bring sensation to your body. So I always say, like, on a 1 to 10 scale, at least a level 7. So I want to feel a stretch in my hips, a level 7. And then I decide in advance, is this going to be 30 seconds? Is this going to be 5 breaths? Is this like, have a beginning and an end, so your brain's not like, is it over yet? Is it over yet? This feels like a forever. Like, set a timer or breathe. And you can even tell yourself, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. And when your brain starts to go somewhere else, go, I need to be a level 7 in the hips. So you can do that by pushing your knees down. You can tilt your pelvis forward. Like,
To
you're
put some
telling your brain
stretch
to shut
in
up
your right.
and to be in this moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the way that I made up that works for my brain.
Right.
But I am like a hyperactive, like, I do fitness for a living. I'm in my body all the time. Another really good way that everyone can do right now is, I want you to look around your room and find 3 things that you can see.
Okay. Yes, got them.
Okay, perfect. Now I want you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Actually, no, I lied. Let's go back to those 3 things you can see.
Okay.
I want you to think about them and think, what do they feel like?
Okay. I'll
Like,
tell
are
you
they
what I'm looking
heavy?
at. I'm
Okay.
looking at my wall and I have like it's a pegboard up and I've and I picked 3 things, but there's like a million things on this wall but I've got my headset and then a canvas bag of like goodies and then my little like wicker basket that I made when I was like 10. Don't ask me why I still have it, but so they all have very different textures and I'm like, "Ooh, I want to touch it now. I need to touch it."
Yeah.
You know?
Is there a question? What's the question that you could ask about those things?
Um in terms of like their texture or just overall? Like,
Anything. So here's the great thing about mindfulness. You can't get it wrong. You're just going to be
oh,
curious. So you want your brain to be curious. So ask yourself any question. There's no wrong answer. What's a question you could ask about those 3 things that you saw?
um, I immediately start going to texture because that's my interior design brain where I'm like, ooh, I wonder how that feels. Or like I want to touch because I have like a silicone based thing. So I'm like, I wonder how that would feel in between my fingers. Or like the canvas, like opening and closing the drawstring bag. Or like running, like how would that feel running your hand or like holding the basket, looking at it?
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. And notice, what is your brain doing anything else right now when you're asking yourself curious questions about
No,
the thing that you see?
no,
Yeah.
it's just
So
focused
awesome.
on
Okay.
that.
So that's step number 1. Yeah. No, that's awesome. We're being mindful right now. It's happening in real life. Okay. So this is called the 3-2-1 exercise. So that was a 3 things you can see. Perfect. Now we're all going to close our eyes. We're trying to listen. So I want you to listen to 2 things. One of them might be my voice, which is very obvious, but try to hear something that's maybe not obvious. If you have ADHD, maybe you can hear the electricity. For me, I can
Yes,
hear
I
a
can.
plane outside. I'm going to shut up.
I was gonna say I can hear
I'm going to shut
my
up in a
computer
second.
and
Yes.
the
So
AC
close
going
your eyes.
off.
I'll make it quiet and try and hear something like really quiet.
I'm hearing something quiet.
Yep.
Like so my ears are looking for something quiet to listen to or like focus on.
Correct.
I can't.
Yep. Can you hear my voice?
I can hear your voice. Yes. Yes.
Nice. Now, is there something else you can hear?
The fridge. Oh wait, I heard a bird outside
Yeah, the
chirping.
fridge counts.
There's a bird
Sweet.
outside. Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. Okay, open your eyes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then the last one. So the first thing is 3 things you can see, 2 things you can hear. And the last one is 1 thing you can feel. And I'm going to tell you this 1 thing you can feel in 2 different ways, and you can choose. So one's a little more challenging and requires a more reflection. The first thing, so feel is going to have 2 options. Feel is how something physically feels. So if I think about it, I can feel my hoodie on my skin.
Right.
If I think about it, I can almost like feel that I have rings on.
Yeah.
I also have a butt heater on my chair, so I definitely feel the heat on my butt.
Right.
So feel can be that way. And if that's a challenge for you, you can literally pinch yourself and say, oh, I felt that. That's the easier version.
Okay.
Okay. When you start, that's how I recommend you start. Once you
Mm,
practice this more, then you're going to ask yourself how you feel, like emotionally,
mm.
which that's a practice that takes time,
Yes, it
especially when we're
does.
masking all the time, when we're showing up for other people the way that we think that we want them to be, not who we are actually, what we're actually experiencing.
Yeah.
So once you've got like, oh, I feel my skin, then we go a little deeper and you're like, what is the emotion that I'm feeling?
Hmm.
And a lot of people, when they first start, they'll be like, tired. And I'm like, okay, but tired is not an emotion. So that's a whole longer, that's what I help people with is emotional regulation and emotional
Right.
intelligence and all that. But like, that's
Which,
the first step to start asking yourself, how do you feel?
yeah. And I'm glad you bring this up because I started going on this whole self-discovery when I got, so we moved from Florida to Tennessee during COVID, during 2020. And I went through a whole
Mm.
huge depression mode and just like, so I'm like, I'm going to figure out who I am because I really don't know who I am. I went through that whole thing, learned about somatic resonance and experiencing and all of that. And boy, oh boy, is there a lot to learn and the grounding and just like you're saying, feeling your clothes on, feeling, your internal emotions and how that really impacts your physical. I mean, also your mental state of mind. And so I've been like on this huge discovery, figuring these things out and still struggle. Like it's not a one size fits all, and it's not like there isn't a one destination. Like it's almost like an evolving, like, okay, I've gotten to this point and that's great, but like I still have more to improve. There's always going to be ways to improve yourself, which is it's hard when you're still having to caregive and still having to mask. You mentioned earlier about like being like each person gets a different portion of you or they get a different personality or a different side of you. And I just had a friend, so one of my business partners, she's the one that actually shared with me. She's like, I think you have ADHD. Like, I think here's why. She's a behavioral analyst, so she could tell me that undiagnosed wise, right? Like, unofficially, this is what we're dealing with. She was listening to one of my podcasts and she's like, you sound robotic. You sound almost fake to me because I get a different side of you. And I said, actually, that's my real self when I'm really curious and interested in meeting people. And because we're so close, almost to the point where we're like family, you see a whole other side of me. And she's like, I'm traumatized because that sounds so great for you to be like this. And I get this side. I'm like, yeah, and that's why I have all this mom guilt because my family sees this side and they don't see the curious, excited Tiffany. They see like the everyday, mundane, overwhelmed, dealing with all the overstimulation Tiffany. And so figuring out how to stop masking both of those and just be me or just like be the Tiffany that's always excited or I mean we're not always excited, but like just being able to be that person, it's hard to find that inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you mentioned, it's not one thing.
Mhm.
So I just did, when people work with me, it's a 12-week. Well, if they're working with me one on one, it's 12 weeks. And then after that, they can decide. I give them enough life skills that they can go on or they can continue to work with me. But at 12 weeks, we do an interview and I ask a bunch of questions. And what always comes up, I just did one last week. It was fun. And I was like, okay, what's the one thing that like changed your life? And they get all like their face goes and they're thinking. And I was like, we talked about this last week. And she's like, I don't remember. And I was like, no, remember how it's like 100 different things? And she's like, oh, yeah, yeah, it's not one thing. And I'm like, there's no magic wand.
No.
And what happens is you make these small, tiny changes. So that's my
Right.
big process is like 1% better every day. When you zoom out from that day, I say we have two piles. You want the pile of good decisions to be bigger than the pile of not so good decisions. And after a year, you're going to look back, you won't recognize yourself. The change won't feel so hard when you're in it. And a lot of people think it has to, everybody, but ADHDers specifically have this all or nothing thinking, especially with like healthy lifestyle. I'm on the
Yes.
wagon or I'm off the wagon. And I'm like, hey, look, there's no wagon, there's life. There's this choice right now. And then there's the next choice. Like a lot of people have pizza on Friday and they're like, well, I messed it up. I'll start again on Monday. And it's like, no, you have like Saturday's breakfast. Saturdays, you can still have pizza again Saturday night, but you don't have to throw everything out the window because you made a mistake. So, and it's
Ooh,
not even a
yeah.
mistake. This is life. This is how life is. And you should enjoy pizza if you want pizza, and just don't eat the whole pizza in one sitting. Like I give people tools and
Yes.
skills and mindset shifts of like, whoa, here's a great thing that everyone should understand. There's no rules to life and you get to write your own guidelines. Like
Yeah.
be kind to others is like my only rule. Like don't be a horrible human. Like it's, you can rewrite all whatever rules you want. And an example is we had a rule. So I have boxer dogs and they're like my spirit animal. And when
Mm.
we, in between our first one and our second one, we had a rule that we had to wait 6 months before we were going to get our next animal. And then Xander Pants passed away a few years ago and I could not handle it. I needed a puppy like that moment. And we actually went to get a puppy that day. But my husband was like, no, we have a 6-month rule. We can't. And I was like, well, who made that rule? We made that rule in like college. And I was like, but we get to make our own rules. And my rule is we're getting a puppy.
Right
And so we
now.
did. Right now, I can't handle it. And we went to go see her. And of course, we had to have her. She
Of
was,
course.
anyways. But like, there's no rules to life. And
Hmm.
with ADHD, we also have demand avoidance. And demand avoidance works with ourself as well. If I tell myself I have to do something, guess what's not getting done? The thing that I told myself I have to do.
That
So
is my
then,
kids.
yeah, we switch our language. So with kids, this works really well. I get to blank. I'm so excited to blank. Isn't it awesome? Versus for me,
You
I
have
love
to.
gardening. I know a lot of ADHDers love gardening, but one year I told myself I have to get the drip system out. And that whole season, it stayed in a rat's nest in the middle because I told myself I have to do that. And then I'm like, oh, I can't do it because I told myself I have to. So
Yep. It's
tell
funny you
yourself
mentioned
you get
gardening.
to.
We're gonna have to have you come back on, I think, a few more times to share and just have conversations because boy, oh boy, is there so much to unpack here, especially with business. It's like I have to get my mission and my vision down and my pillars down. And then I have to like get all my posting done and my content out. And then I have to get my website up and I have to get, my workshop set up. And it's like your brain is gonna say, yep, nope, that's not happening. Which is kind of where it comes in, where you really can. Business mentors are really helpful for ADHDers because A, they keep you accountable, and B, they help you to see like you get to do this because you like to do it. You want to do this because you want to go help the world in this area, and this is going to get you there. And so it's not like a have to, more of like a this is fun, we get to play and make this happen. Like we're creating something out of nothing, and that's the novelty in it. And so like let's keep the novelty big. And sometimes that gets really hard for business brains. I know myself, I'm like, oh, man, paperwork, I have to go and make this invoice. And then it takes me a whole weekend to get that invoice out.
Yeah, same. But that's why delegation is so great. And yeah,
Yes.
as you said, like a business coach is huge because we're such big picture thinkers. You're like, I have to do the website and the landing page and then this and then that. And a coach is nice, smart, and they'll be like, no, you do this thing now. And then next,
I
we'll do the next thing. But our brains
yes.
are like, no, but we need all the things.
Yes,
But
that was my
that's
call.
the other beautiful. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing of, and what I've realized growing my business and spending way more than I want to share on coaches, I had a lot of resistance because I was like, oh, I have to do it their way. And now this year I invested in the biggest business coaching thing that I've ever invested in. But one of the reasons I did so is because they do a lot of assessments at the beginning, like Colby and DISC and motivation maps, and figure out how your brain works. and then they work with you. They're like, here's like 1,000 ways to do it, but we're going to handhold. And I love that. I was like, they do for business coaching what I do with like health and fitness and humans and mind management. So
It,
finding something that works for the individual who has ADHD, not ADHDers in general. It's like you and your brain. What works for you is not going to might work for me, some of it, but like a lot of it is going to be very, very different.
yeah.
And I know there's a saying for autism, and I wish it was it is the same for ADHD. It's like once you know someone with autism, you know one person with autism. There's a lot of, especially with all the TikTok and the stuff. And I mean, you don't have a formal
Yes.
diagnosis, and that's not important at all. But there are so many characteristics that we're like, oh, we
Oh,
haven't,
yes.
like, yes, it's us. For me, so I got diagnosed twice in 2022 again, so I could try medicine. But it was so, my grieving was every Saara characteristic I thought that was like me unique. I was like, that's an ADHD characteristic. Oh, that's ADHD. Oh, that's ADHD. Like the more I learned about it, I got really frustrated because I thought this was like a unique Saara thing. And I'm still unique, but a lot of it is that's ADHD. I was like,
I,
that's why you're so
I'm
fun
both.
and weird
Yeah.
because you're ADHD. And I'm like, embrace it. So,
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned about the grieving process. I talked with another podcast interview about that specific thing. It was like, I feel like this past year has been a lot of grieving, and people don't really talk about that. And maybe we can come back on and like share that whole process of going through it, because you do end up feeling like, oh, so I'm only like this because it's my ADHD that makes me like this. It's not because like me as a person. But then at the same time, it's like, hold up. But that is a part of your brain, and that is a part of you. And it's something that should be celebrated and not frowned upon. And so embracing it is definitely something that we need to take more lightheartedly and saying, okay, well, it's not an excuse that I'm making, because we're not excusing it as like, okay, we can be absent-minded because it's our ADHD. No, it's like, okay, just bear with me. I have to have some workarounds. I need to implement some of my tools and some of my skills so I can make this happen. But that's not something that I need to be depressed about. It is something that I grieve, because I'm like, man, I have to work 10 million times harder to get this same thing done, which is also where we get into, being very action oriented and very, like, I have to get this task done, or we want to achieve. We're like high achievers because we're trying to prove that we are capable of doing these things. And that's where a lot of burnout comes in. So there's like all these catch 22 cycles that happen because, yeah, just embracing it is part of the battle.
mhm. You said burnout, which fired something in my brain because I gave you a mindfulness exercise, and that's great and all. I also have I have a link for a free mindfulness guide for
Perfect.
ADHDers if you want
We're
it,
going to
I
put
will
it
share it.
in the show
But
notes. Yes.
for burnout, at least I do it once a day. Brain dump. Pen to paper, write everything, give yourself 5 minutes, write everything in your head onto a piece of paper, because if you don't, we're going to ruminate and we're going to forget. We're going to ruminate and we're going to forget. And what I
Amen.
do, whatever timer, you're going to hear me say this again if you have me back on, whatever timer you decide. So if it's 3 minutes, 1 minute, you're going to follow through all the way to the end. So a big part of training our brain is keeping promises with ourselves, right?
Yep.
Telling ourselves we're going to do something and following through, building that trust. We do it with other people. We got to do it with ourselves. This is how you learn about who you are. Writing everything down, whether that's 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you're like, oh, I got everything out of my brain and there's still time left, you're going to break big tasks into smaller tasks. So, for an example, let's say renovate kitchen, which that's a huge task. You'd be like, paint baseboards, take baseboards off, rip out cabinets. Like you are literally creating your brain dump into tasks, into the smallest tasks, even into 2 minute tasks. Because if our brain knows the next
Yes.
2 minute action, it's just a process of getting started. So I
Yep.
also remember when I was talking about my habit books, I used to teach people the habits stuff that I read in the books. It doesn't work like that for ADHDers. There's like this big thing, and I used to teach people eat the frog, start the day with eating the frog. Do you know how hard that is? Like doing the
No.
hardest
Yeah.
thing first for an
Yeah.
ADHD or no? I say start with the smallest What's the
Easiest.
smallest one thing you can
That's
do?
what I teach.
Like, do you have
Yes.
to open your computer? Do you have to
Yes.
open your computer? Okay. And
Yes.
then do you have to open your email? And then you have to
Yes.
find the email. And then maybe you start typing it or open ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT your thoughts. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to do this, start the day with a proposal. No, you're starting the day with opening the computer. Have your cup of coffee. Like, it doesn't, don't start the day with eating the frog because you're going to feel shame about that. Like you said, all day with the invoices. Like, you're going to worry
Yes.
about it all day and it's going to be this huge buildup. And then you're going to do the invoice and then you're going to crash and you're going to be exhausted, but you still have to be a mom and you still have to show
Yep.
up for your little human. Like, it's garbage. The advice that's given to normal people is garbage. So start with
Doesn't
like the
work.
smallest task. Yeah. And like motivate, put your favorite music on and like drink some coffee, move around a little, and then start with a tiny task. And you'll be way
Yeah.
more successful than if you're like, I have to eat the frog today. No, you
Yeah.
don't have to
No,
do it. There's no rules to life. You can do
we
it your
make our
way.
own rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't tell us what to
I'm
do.
glad I'm glad you mentioned about the 2-minute task. I just did a breakthrough challenge and we were working on all of this task planning, getting from overwhelm to action, breaking things down into 2-minute tasks because your brain can handle a 2-minute task when you know like, oh, this is going to be over really quick. It's something that I can do really fast. And maybe you can't write the whole email. Like I was even talking to my participants about if you can't write the whole email because that's overwhelming, can you write the first sentence in 2 minutes and like revise it and make it pretty or make it whatever like you need it to be? Can you get that done and put it in drafts and say, okay, I've started it. And then the next time you bring it out, you write another sentence, and maybe you do that a couple times throughout the day. And then you have that big task, that big to do that was really overwhelming done because you broke it up into 2 minutes a few times during the day. And so there's no thing, and I agree with you, the frog, I cannot eat the frog. And I listened to all of those mindset advices of, wake up early, do this. It's like, no, my brain is up late at night. So I do my stuff late at night. Is that best for my sleep? Probably not. But that's how my brain works. And so I end up getting those smaller tasks done. I save the bigger tasks for when I feel like I've accomplished something and now I can accomplish something more. But you have to, I
Mhm.
think all of this too is like seeing that our brain works differently. And no, my brain does not work the same as Sarah's brain. Does not work the same as my kids who have ADHD brain because we all have slight differences. Just like you only meet one autistic person. I know several of them, but they are all so
Mhm.
unique and there isn't one right way to do things. And I think a lot of times society ends up putting that like, this is the only way to do this task and this is how we have to live our life. And it's like, no, we don't. There is no rules. It's going to be my new, there's no rules, but there
Yeah.
are boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries are good. I say guidelines. I'm like, yeah, there's guidelines. And if
Yes,
you want to live in society, like, you have to be
you
in
have to abide.
society, but we still
Yes,
don't have to do it a regular. Yeah. 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 Awesome.
I love that. No, this is great. So if anybody wants to work with you, Sarah, we're gonna go ahead and I'll have your bio and everything's in the show notes so they can get attached, to what you're doing. But where is the best place for them to find you?
Oh, this is going to be accountability. Right now, my new website directs to my old website, so it's fine. But I'm working on a new website. It's drsaara.com. So
Okay,
SAARA. Yeah, drsaara.com. Look, now I'm
perfect.
accountable. This is actually accountability like this doesn't work for ADHDers because I just got a hit of dopamine by telling you my website was going to be up. And then I usually don't take action, but I have tools. I will have a new website. It
It
will
will
be
be
up,
up and running.
drsaara.com.
I'm
Yes,
sure,
it will be.
by the time this airs, it will have already been in my editing software and all the things for a good week. So you'll have time.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you.
This
This
is
was so much fun.
absolutely, I'll have you back on and we're going to dive a little bit more, maybe into more mindset, because that is right up my alley.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks
Yay.
so much for joining. Bye.
Bye.